time ever as an official part of the program. So the format for this afternoon, we have 4 speakers who will have 15 minutes each, which we are keeping strictly to time. Then we have a very short 5-minute presentation followed by a tea break, and then 4 more speakers. And then if we have any time at the end, we'll have some discussions, but otherwise we'll just have some concluding remarks. So I would like to begin. I will hand over the chairing responsibilities to my co-convenor. Brent, Otto and I started organising this about 6 months ago, and Brent will chair the first part of the session, the first half of the session.
Each of you know where I come from and speak today. So allow me to share a small anecdote. My interest in research on the Anglo-Indian community started 2 international reunions ago when I first spoke on being Anglo-Indian in 2013 at Kolkata. Some of you, I'm sure, were there. That day remains etched in memory, particularly with one comment I received on Facebook, which went on to say something like this: "She needs to shoot arrows to meet her target."
To all of you. I am, as Brent said, from Pondicherry, and my paper traces the genesis of Anglo-Indians in Pondicherry, and I have titled it Pondicherry's Small Town Grandiose, because though Pondicherry is a small town, it has a large history. In 2008, when the article, "The Way We Are at Pondicherry," was written, I had started my work by quoting from Mr. Frank Anthony's book, Britain's Betrayal in India. The excerpt addresses a request by a leader of French descent to open a branch of the All India Anglo-Indian Association in the Union Territory of Pondicherry.
He completed his doctorate in South Asian history at the University of Oxford. His thesis was entitled "Decolonizing Anglo-Indian Strategies for a Mixed-Race Community in Late Colonial India during the first half of the 20th century." His book, which some of you have seen and a few of you perhaps have also purchased, came out last year. It's entitled "Anglo-Indians and Minority Politics in South Asia." He has a forthcoming book with Hearst Publishers entitled "Anglo-India and the End of Empire," and it will be out by Christmas 2019 in both Western and an Indian version.
Going back to our typical definition of who an Anglo-Indian is, and there are another group of people who could be considered, like those in Pondicherry, as our close cousins, the Anglo-Burmans. I do recognize that today, probably the term Anglo-Burmese would be more politically correct, because we no longer use the term Burmans to refer to Burmese people. But the term Anglo-Burman was a term which was used by the mixed community in Burma themselves, and it was the political and legal group that existed from 1935 until shortly after Burmese independence.
Against by the British because of racism. Thank you. So my writing on Pakistan had no resonances with these ideas of marginalisation, probably because it was a smaller community, there wasn't so much diversity, but I want to point to some of the historical differences as to why this was. What is different in Pakistan? You know these differences, I hardly need to tell you people, but it is important to understand why my experience was so different. Am I holding the mic properly now? Thank you. So of course in India you have the caste Hindus and the lower castes. I did study religions, and it's quite clear that people who are outside of caste are outsiders. Muslims and Hindus are considered malechas. It is a very lower status socio-economic.
By circumstance, I started to collect information about our family. Deeply motivated by when I became the MLA, I was surprised when I realized how many present-day Anglo-Indians are still of the opinion that those of British descent only constitute the Anglo-Indians. It was a challenge for me as I moved across the state. So, while going through the past, this paper evolved. The story of migration, struggle and sacrifice of an Anglo-Indian family, like so many others, whose businesses or contribution to India have been unrecorded or unrecognized.
She's currently in India for a year on a Fulbright Nehru Fellowship, and she's staying in Bombay, which is her Indian home. In 2017, she authored the book Britain's Anglo-Indians, The Invisibility of Assimilation, and she's just had her 6th book, not all on Anglo-Indians, but her 6th book has just been published on Goans, an edited collection. And to make a link with the last speaker, currently with her Fulbright, she's in India exploring Western music in India. But that's not the topic. The topic of her paper for now is, the title is Westward Bound, the Role of Indian Ports in the Development of Steamer Culture in Mid-20th Century Anglo-Indian Mass Migration.
To Robyn and to Brent, Otto for inviting me to present some of my more recent research to you. It's always a pleasure to meet fellow scholars of Anglo-Indian studies, and I'm particularly honored to be here at this International Anglo-Indian Reunion. And thank you to all of you for being here, and particularly for staying even after the coffee break. So let's begin. In the late 1940s, through the 1950s and into the 1960s, thousands of Anglo-Indians left Indian shores and migrated to the UK. Although the exact numbers are fuzzy, it is believed that no less than 50,000 Anglo-Indians departed from the land of their birth to take on immigrant lives in their new host nations. In his book, The Cat's Stable, the Sri Lankan-Canadian author Michael Ondaatje provides a semi-autobiographical account of a similar voyage. The novel gets its title from the custom of seating the most insignificant passengers at the least privileged table on board a ship, the exact opposite of the prestigious captain's table. In her review of Ondaatje's book in the New York Times, Liesl Schlesinger informs us that the author takes the reader on a journey through 3 deeply submerged weeks in his own memory from the year 1954, when, at age 11, he traveled on the ocean liner, the Oronsay, from Colombo, in what was then Ceylon, to England, a passage that would lead him from his past to his future self. In 2008, as part of a year-long field research ethnographic project that I carried out among immigrant Anglo-Indians in the UK, and for several years thereafter, I had the opportunity to speak to about 100 such individuals who had made the outward steamer voyage from India to Britain. Indeed, if one goes by their real-life accounts of such voyages that lasted several weeks, one finds very little fiction associated with Ondaatje's narrative. What emerged from the various accounts provided to me by elderly men and women now in their 80s and 90s who recalled their youthful experiences aboard those ships was that a distinct shipboard culture developed, a result of their unique biracial heritage. And through this paper, I hope to throw light on a distinctive seafaring subculture that pertained to entertainment, cuisine, and tourism, a direct consequence of their hybridized upbringing and cultural mores. To a very large extent, all seafaring human traffic from India in that era relied on the British India Steam Navigation Company, known for short as BI, that had operated from the Indian subcontinent as early as 1856, when it had been formed out of Mackinac, Mackenzie and Company.
In the last few decades, there has been a significant surge in writings by and about Anglo-Indians. These writings document their unique experience of colonial and post-colonial India, along with stories of migration and nostalgia. The rise in writings by Anglo-Indians has been accompanied by an increase in scholarly engagement with the community, both from India and around the world. This has opened up a dynamic field called Anglo-Indian Studies, covering various disciplines across the humanities and social sciences. A majority of these works are studies of specific groups of Anglo-Indians based on region, gender, or temporal categories. They often explore the uniqueness of the Anglo-Indian community, its attitudes, culture, food, and clothing. While this has provided several fascinating and important revelations about the community, a preoccupation with the uniqueness of the community alone has the risk of exoticizing and othering the community, which allows the research to be removed from its socio-political context. In my research as a student of literary studies, I have attempted to explore the possibility of an alternate method that engages with the distinctiveness of the Anglo-Indian question in India within the larger debates about nation, community, and identity. In the process, I have seen that the Anglo-Indian community is an uneasy subject and often resists straightforward categorization.
Thank you, Brent, and thank you, everyone, for being here. Another long day of listening. The presentation that I'm giving here is really very much a progress report on research I've begun very recently, as in most of what I'm going to talk about today is about something that happened at the beginning of December, just gone. And it's on the project that I've called until now, but I'm thinking of changing the title. I've called it Roots Tourism, my Roots Tourism project, but the more I talk to people, the less I like the name. So this project was generated or conceived of through previous research with Anglo-Indians in New Zealand over the last 3 years. And through that, I've learned of a number of second and third generation Anglo-Indians who've travelled to India or who are planning to travel to India in order to investigate their family roots. So it's the other side of the journey that Rochelle talked about earlier. And this is part of a growing phenomenon which is recognised in scholarly literature and elsewhere, such as by very on-the-ball tourist boards, as roots tourism. And it entails selecting destinations to which one has ancestral links. So with the increased popularity of genealogical tracing through DNA analysis and the availability of technology-enhanced archival searches, family history information is more accessible than ever before.